Dear viewers, ladies and gentlemen, in the next few minutes we'll talk about images, about their impact, about their beauty and what they can say about us. Our talk will be based on looking, although we are aware that to really look closely we'd need to stand in front of the original work, and we'd need more time because meeting a painting is actually conducting a dialogue, and this is a slow activity. Our encounter doesn't meet these conditions, but we'll still at least try to make a comment and perhaps try to motivate you to go to the gallery next time and talk to the originals with your eyes. Images in which we recognize ourselves are the focus of the current project Horizon2020 AMASS, acting on the margins, art as social sculpture. In this project, we are developing the idea of education through art and culture. We see art education as an extremely important subject in schools, comparable to language teaching. In fact, we use visual languages in our everyday communication, and we have to learn them too. From another European project called Images and Identity, in which we participated some time ago, Lucie and Maria have selected only 4 important images for you that speak to us with great intensity at this time. These images act as a mirror into which many children and their teachers, friends and parents from 7 European countries looked. This mirror didn't show them their photographic images, but asked them questions. Who am I and how do others see me? Who am I and who are the people around me? What language do they speak and what culture do they come from? How do they think of me and how do they think they see me? Who are we? Where are we going? Let me start by stating a fairly well-known fact. We live in visual culture. Only a very small percentage of direct experience shapes our knowledge and ideas about the world, and the information we take in the hustle and bustle of everyday life, often against our will, is visual information. Images surround us. We live in images. We think through images. It's no longer comenius orbis sensualium pictus. It is the world perceived through the senses and in images. But we ourselves live in the world we have created through images. Visual culture experts speak of virtual reality, of audio-visual modes of communication that shape us while we ourselves simultaneously create these systems. We create the world through images on our own. We think through images, and every day we produce a huge amount of visual information that we share with known and unknown users on social media. These multimedia systems aren't innocent. However, we need visual or media literacy to understand their impact on our lives, the reality we live in, and the self-image we create. Do we have this literacy? Also, because we want to make the ubiquitous technical images a little more difficult to understand, as well as photoreality, which we know is far from reality, we've chosen such images that aren't explicit and don't pretend to present the truth. They are a mirror that'll ask you questions about what you can actually see. There'll be another important factor. We've devised a creative activity to go with the image, an activity that deepens your understanding. You can go back to the tasks and try them at any other time. you'll need a few simple and classic tools, a head to think and a hand to do something new that you'll be the author of. Of course, you can then share these artistic statements with friends and then continue the dialogue with them and the images. We'll be pleased if you send us samples of your dialogues with images in which you are mirrored. You can find our email address on the Horizon2020 project website. Good luck! Virtually yours, Maria, Lucie and Eva. This painting hangs in my office. Every day I look at the figure of the child that dominates the image. I look at the bold and unambiguous colors, the shape of the butterfly wings that evoke the aesthetic cliché of something pretty and appealing. A butterfly and a child. What could be more joyful? But when we look closely at the child's face and its clothes, something strikes us. What is it that makes us feel uneasy? Graphic artist and painter Berenika Ovčáčková comments on her work as follows. The painting The Butterfly Girl is inspired by a documentary photograph from pre-war Vienna. One interpretation could be the connection with the Holocaust, which, however, at the time of taking the photograph was still an unknown concept for the later genocide of the Jews. At that time, Czechs, Germans and Jews lived together in Central Europe. Wings can express both the desire for freedom and escape from death, or death itself. The soul flies away to heaven. Another interpretation, completely free from historical experience, can be a simple representation of the feeling of an abandoned or rejected child who longs to leave or fly away somewhere, or, on the contrary, to return somewhere. The image of a little girl, an orphan, refers to the theme of childhood and its experience, which is certainly not joyful and happy for all children. Lucie will now give you an art assignment to think about and share with others. There are two shots from Milena Dopitová's video in front of us. One shows a portrait of old women, but we can clearly see that under the makeup there are still young faces. It's the author herself and her twin sister. What is the relationship between them? What does it feel like to be old? Can we imagine the aging process, or do we have to experience it? In the second shot, we can see a moment of slow dance, which refers to slowness, to slow movement. Personal identity is always a process of becoming, a slow process. Identity isn't a given or an immutable essence, but it's a gradual transformation that happens in an environment of social relations. It happens through language and also through representation. Old age has its own images. Milena's film says, "Look at yourself, you'll be old too." Have you noticed how old age is portrayed in our culture? And here's the author's comment. I just wanted to show what is not very popular. An old person on the street, on the tram, in the candy store, or anywhere else. It opens up questions related to personal identity, relationships between people, relationships between siblings, and it's also a kind of sociological case study. Am I afraid of getting older? Not really, But I think the worst thing about old age, apart from serious illness, is abandonment, and that's what I'm afraid of. Lucie has an art assignment for you again on the topic of aging. And here I give the floor to Lucie, who worked with children in the gallery on the topic of special film portraits, the so-called screen tests. A screen test is a concept that is used in the film language and describes the situation when an actor or an actress applies for a role in a film. At an audition, the camera is pointed at them and they are asked to give a short performance, to role-play a situation. Based on their performance, the director decides if the actor or actress is suitable for the part. We are showing you a portrait of Beverly Grant, a film actress and screenwriter, one of the group of stars surrounding artist and founder of pop art Andy Warhol. Andy's parents were Europeans who came to America as poor immigrants from eastern Slovakia, and Andy was one of those immigrant children who, through their own diligence and talent, made it in the art world and rose to the pinnacle of fame and popularity. Andy said of himself, "If you want to know everything about Andy Warhol, look at the surface of my paintings, films and me. There I am. There's nothing else behind it." Lucie, can you show us the assignment? In front of you, there's an acrylic painting. But what's painted in the picture? Isn't it rather written, a message in a foreign language? Mr. Eduard Ovčáček, who painted the picture, is a Czech artist who's been experimenting with communication through language, words and visual art all his life. He belonged to a group of other artists who called themselves lettrists, and was also a member of the structural painting movement, Art Informal, where language became an abstract gesture made in different materials that themselves carry a certain message. Eduard Ovčáček explains that writing and symbols have become the central theme for me for more than 30 years. Thinking about writing and symbols took shape when I was working on poetry, specifically visual poetry. Today, I see communicating with the viewer through writing, pictograms and symbols as a fundamental opportunity for art to directly address the viewer and the sensibilities of contemporary people in a way that can be understood by the whole world. Yes, we live in language and we live in images. Our selves, our identities are tightly bound up with the languages we use, and these in turn are linked to the places where we live, where we were born, and where we were introduced to culture. Fragments of letters, messages and symbols have the ability to evoke our hidden desires, lost memories and fantasies. Lucie, Marie, shall we try to look at the message that painter Eduard Ovčáček left us in the painting? Could you set a task? Finally, let us draw your attention to one of the most famous icons of European and world painting, and probably the most famous painting by Paul Gauguin. It's a large canvas created by this French painter during his stay in Tahiti in a very difficult moment of life crisis. The scene is full of symbols and mysterious clues. It's full of fantastic colors, brimming with smells, tastes, and sounds. The artist's instructions are to read it from right to left. In the upper right corner, there's Gauguin's signature and the year 1897. The black dog on the right is again Gauguin himself. People are depicted in various stages of life here. From birth, that's the sleeping infant on the right, to death, appearing in the form of a crouched old woman in the left part of the composition. The white bird at her feet signifies the nothingness of empty words. It's a symbol of futility. The figure of a young man in the center is reaching for the fruit of paradise, and the whole scene is guarded by a deity, the bluish figure in the background. Then, in the upper left corner, there are the most crucial sentences, questions without question marks, which mirror our fears and hopes. Where do we come from? Who are we? Where are we going? And finally, one of the most powerful appeals made by another famous European, Czech writer Milan Kundera, in 2014. In the Middle Ages, the unity of Europe rested on a common religion. In the modern history, religion gave way to culture, philosophy, literature, art, which became the realization of the sovereign values in which Europeans recognized and identified themselves. Well, it was culture's turn to cede its place, but to what or to whom? Where is the area in which the sovereign values capable of uniting Europe will be realized? Technical discoveries, the market, politics with the ideal of democracy, with the principle of tolerance? But if it doesn't protect any rich creation and any strong thinking, won't tolerance become empty and useless? Or are we to understand the departure of culture as a kind of liberation and indulge in a kind of dancing euphoria? I don't know. I only seem to know one thing. Culture has already ceded its place. The idea of European identity is receding into the past. The European, the one who misses Europe. However, the main contours of European culture are now emerging clearly before us. It's our treasure, our spirit, and our life. The culture is worth defending and rebuilding. We must do it actively, in every place, in every situation, in every moment of every day, and never stop.